again, guys. I'm back again with some more Graveyard Keeper and how to play. I'm going to have to be a little bit more quiet this episode because it's been very hard to find time to record this weekend and actually do a voiceover. Plus it's been very rainy and I don't really have a fancy recording setup. So you'll have to forgive me if you can hear the rain in the background. Anyway. So right now I'm just finishing up the quests for Kresovold and Horadric. And much like last time, I'm just going to chime in when I have stuff to say. I believe I've talked about a lot of what the basic gameplay involves already, but if I think of anything important, I'll make a note. The only other thing I can think to add is, like you just saw there, the guard walking past, he would not talk to me. That's the way it is with a lot of NPCs, which is why it's pretty important to keep track of the times which you're working with and making sure to leave yourself time to go talk to NPCs on the days that they're there. So you're alright. Here we're talking again with Jerry, and he's going to give us another quest because, of course he is. That tends to be the way it goes with the NPCs in this game, is that if you want them to do something for them, you're gonna have to do something for them. I don't want to spoil things, but it does come up again a couple of times later in the game, with some actually pretty important stuff. I'm sure if I continue recording I'll get to see that point, but it does get to be important to make sure you're staying on top of what you're producing. And we also just learned how to harvest things, and I believe a little later on in this episode I'm going to actually show you guys a little bit about cooking as well. Now, I just talked with the guard standing right there at the base of the Witch Hill, and he tells me to come back because the Inquisitor isn't there until one of the later days. And a lot of times that's how you'll find out when NPCs show up in certain places, is either by catching them there or by catching someone there who will make a note of something. Again, it's very important to pick up on the tiny cues in this. Miss Charm is one of my favorites because she sounds like Carl Weezer saying croissant. So I know I don't actually show this in the recording until much later on, but there is, if you have it regular keys, if you hit your tab button, it'll pull up your menu where you have your technologies and your inventory and all of that. And one of your tabs is actually your NPC tab that will tell you quests that you have for your NPCs and what days they can be found. I find this to be really helpful if I'm forgetting what I'm trying to do, but if you have a better memory than me, then you probably won't have a problem with it. So you'll notice we also just got a note from I believe he's the poet, that we need to go and speak to the astrologer, or astronomer, I can't remember which it is. I don't remember if it's him that mentions it or if it's Jerry, but he does say eventually that he shows up on the day that has a symbol that's the moon. I kind of just tend to refer to him as like Moon Day and that kind of thing, but you'll recognize it. So right here, I'm just bringing Jerry the beer that I got from Horadric for delivering his letter. So you'll notice that Jerry mentioned the underground network of tunnels. It'll probably take a little while to be able to actually open them. You can get them pretty early on if you want to put your resources towards that, but I would definitely recommend going for the bridge first. They really just make it easier to get around. They can make it a lot faster to get into and out of town, especially. So that was Yorick. He gave you an exhumation permission. I'm not sure if you were able to see that with as fast as it popped up on the screen, but he wants you to go dig up a body. And this is mostly just to show you that you can dig up bodies. It's actually pretty integral later on to keeping your graveyard quality high, especially if you have a lot of surgeon's mistakes when you bury bodies. They can really impact your graveyard quality, and sometimes it can just be better to cremate the bodies. It also helps to save space in the graveyard. And you'll see here, this is a little neat thing. For every body you dig up, most of them you can actually remove flesh from them as well if you want to get some extra resources. Now, I don't actually show it off, but across from the graveyard there is actually an area where you can set up a crematorium of sorts. And you'll see here I'm actually just checking at the bridge to see what I need. and what sort of crafting stations I need to build myself. You'll see me go back there about 8,000 times because I didn't write down the items I actually needed. I just tried to memorize them, and my memory is really bad. Another thing to note is that if you exhume a body, it's best to either go ahead and remove the grave or immediately replace it with a different body, just because it will bring down the rating of your graveyard. I wouldn't say replace it if you only have bodies that are going to give it a lower score at any rate, unless you have the supplies to decorate them. In this, you won't really see me do much decorating aside from repairing the graves that are already there. So you'll notice when I just tried to cut down that tree, it said I need another technology. So there are technologies that will assist in like taking down bigger items and that kind of thing. You can actually unlock quite a few of the technologies pretty early on without needing to actually have opened the church, but there are some that are required to have opened the church. I know that there was a point in my personal game where I reached a point where I ran out of technologies that I was able to use because I had gathered so many of the intelligence points. I'm not positive what they're called, but I had gathered so many of them that I was able to buy all of the technologies up until I needed blue points. I find it really helpful to just keep a stockpile of wood. I haven't really found a massive use for stone until much later on, once you start unlocking stone graves and that kind of thing, and stone grave fences. But it is definitely helpful to keep a pile of wood on your property at all times. It really helps speed up crafting, especially when you don't have to go out and waste your energy collecting more wood because you ran out right in the middle of something. So I clicked through that kind of fast, but that was the instructions about the blueprint desk, which just lets you build the different items that you need in your yard. And you'll see here that I have some like branches and things that are blocking my path. I'll take care of those. It's actually a pretty good idea to go ahead and take care of these as soon as you're able to, because it severely limits the areas where you can place your crafting supplies, and that can get to be pretty troublesome when you have like 4 or 5 different supplies that you need to have out at once. Now when you're destroying something, say a grave or a crafting station, you don't get all of the items you use to create it returned to you, so be pretty careful unless you want to spend a whole bunch more time going and recollecting things if you build something in the wrong spot. I also should mention that your trunk, whichever trunk you have in whichever different area you're in, like for example right now we're in our yard, the trunk is connected to each of your little crafting stations in pretty much every area. So in the indoors, say your house, you have a couple of trunks, and both of those are able to be used at your stove. So there I just bought the technology to be able to make planks, which is one of the things I need for the bridge. I also need to know some smithing, because I'm going to need, I believe, 8 nails. On top of that, you're also going to see that I use a lot of nails and wood and flitch and other supplies when I'm actually just building my crafting tables. Also, there's just a mysterious guy in your basement. No big deal. Don't worry about that. That's not important right now. So I'm planning on doing some cooking. So I need to put fuel into the oven. And I checked to see, because it'll tell you how much fuel it's going to need as well as how long it will take. So I realized that I needed more twigs to be able to make pretty much anything. And that I needed to be able to prepare some stuff. I'm just gonna go ahead and eat some berries. There are some items that you can eat raw to just gain back a little bit of health. But generally speaking, it's a lot more effective if you cook them. I don't know if this is obvious or not. It took me a little while to figure it out, but that well right there, you can actually get clear water from it. And then in order to actually get water in a usable form, you have to go into your inventory and use the bucket to get the water. I didn't actually get myself enough water. I got as much as my energy would allow, but I wound up having to eat my berries anyway. But what I'm trying to do right now is I'm gathering supplies so that I can make bread and also meat steaks, I guess is what they'd be called. I'm not actually... the cut up flesh, pretty much. So, and it'll also tell you here in your cooking table how much energy you're going to be expending doing it. And that's per one. Now, a lot of these will turn out and give you several at a time, which can be pretty good if you're low on energy and you just want to throw something in the oven to cook.